Today we're talking about all things that make you the runner that you are. I can't wait for this. So what goes into a run? What goes into our fitness? What makes us good and bad at running, in our form, and everything? And guess what? We have the world famous run coach, Bobby McGee, with us today. Bobby has been a run coach for over 40 years, working with everything from high school athletes to Olympic medalists and world champions. Bobby, welcome back to the RunDot podcast.
Hi, Carrie. Thanks so much for having me. We had a blast last time. I'm sure we'll have a blast now, so thanks for having me.
I know. I can't wait to get into it. But first of all, I'm Carrie Tellefson. I'm an Olympian, a broadcaster, and your guide to the world of RunDot. We treat each show like any good workout. We'll start with our warm-up question. We'll settle into our main set conversation, and then we're going to wind things down by having Coach Bobby answer an audience question on the cool down, and it's a good one today. So lots of good stuff. So let's get after it.
This is the RunDot podcast, the running show that brings you world-class coaching with every conversation. Let's get started with today's warm-up.
All right, Bobby, the first question is our warm-up. And we want to know, who would you say is the most famous runner you've ever met?
And the first thing that I wrote down when I thought about this question was, that's an unfair question.
I know it is.
Should talk about the most... You need to talk about the most famous coach I've ever met, maybe, which is Arthur Lydiard.
Yeah.
I got to meet Arthur twice, which was a huge privilege before he passed.
Yeah.
But in terms of famous runners, you know, they're more related to the times that I was coaching in whatever those domains were. You know, I've been with triathlon for a long time now, so it's been a while since I've been, you know, real up close and personal with the running community. But I really enjoyed meeting Ingrid Christensen.
Oh, yeah.
The Norwegian runner. I think she was the first gal under 220 for the marathon. And King Paul Turgat, the most regal, the most amazing man.
So nice.
And yeah, I so enjoyed talking to him. Just so refined. He was like a king.
Yeah.
He was just an incredible person. Yeah. And then I also got the privilege of meeting Herb Elliott, the unbeaten Olympic 1500 meter record holder, as well as the 1500 meter champion. Retired, I think, at 23 before, you know, and he was unbeaten as a miler.
Wow.
He was amazing guy to meet.
Yeah.
And then my two South African favorites, of course, Zola Bud and Josiah Tungwani. You know,
oh my gosh,
I love those two dearly. So that's a longer list than you expected, and of course Frank played a huge role. Frank Shorter played a huge role in getting me to the US and being able to be a coach in the US. So I owe him a huge debt of gratitude. And then Joni Samuelson is an amazing lady to be around as well.
First woman to win the marathon at the Olympics, the first female or women's marathon
champion. Yes, and just absolutely a legend and a groundbreaker, pioneering woman. Yeah, I think lastly, and I met Carl Lewis a couple of times too, which he's a really interesting man to converse with, you know, so he's quite presidential in his manner. You know? So,
yeah, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, but
so
fun to think of all the athletic ability that he has, but also that he, like, remember he had a rap video and he had all kinds of things that he would do in life.
Yeah.
Now he's coaching.
He's very interesting guy.
Yes.
But if I have to think of iconic Olympic moments, you know, him and that, what was the, I forgot what the Olympic apparel sponsor was in LA back in 84.
Oh, but Santa Monica Track Club is what I think of, right? Wasn't he in that?
With him, Yep. With him, with Leroy Burrell and those guys. Remember those bronze outfits that they wore in the 4x100 world record? Amazing. Yeah. No, I've been privileged.
I know.
I've definitely been privileged too.
Really, I was writing some things down, and even just when we're talking, like, I didn't even write Haile Gebrselassie. Like, come on.
Yep.
When you said Paul
Yep.
Tergat, I'm like, okay. I mean,
Yep.
it's really cool.
No, I just never met Hailey.
Oh,
Um,
he is
but
so
he
lovely.
was definitely, in my mind, he was the GOAT. And funnily enough, my time of becoming interested in mechanics in that way was Hailey had a bad great toe on one side. He had a stiff big toe,
Yeah.
and it impacted his gait. It was very, very interesting. And so at that time, my model runner was definitely Bekele.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he
Bekele
had
as
just
well. Oh my gosh.
broken Hailey's record in the 10,000,
Uh-huh.
and it was pre-super shoes, and he's under 26:30 for 10K, and
Yeah.
just astounding. Yeah. So there were a lot of them.
I think that's what's so cool about our sport is I mean, I wrote down Usain Bolt, Allison Felix, Kipchoge, Jackie Joyner
Yeah.
Kersey, Seb Coe, Michael Johnson. I mean, like, the names go on and on. You just gave me about 10 names. I could give you tons of names too. And we just have the opportunity to be able to rub shoulders with the greatest. And
Yes.
I've told this story time and time again, but my best friend from high school, her son was the runner-up for Rookie of the Year for the NBA this year. And just this weekend at the championships, he and his dad were doing some interviewing of the Spurs and the Knicks, and they got to meet Shaq. Like, meeting people like that in the NBA seems like untouchable for us, right? But when you're in the NBA, you get to rub shoulders with them. And when you're in our world, you get to rub shoulders with the greats. And it's pretty cool. It's really neat. But we also get to run the races with the greats. We don't get to play in the basketball games like the NBA guys.
Yes, exactly.
So we're pretty lucky.
The flip side of that is I met a lot of people that I really admired at the time, and then time proved them not to be admirable people anymore.
Really?
So, one doesn't want to mention those. So I've met a number of those as well,
Exactly.
Very.
I didn't even mention Paula Radcliffe. Oh my gosh, we got to move on because there's so many people.
We can have a good chat about people and
Yes, we could.
Let's go.
Okay, well, let's move to the main set. So, Bobby, when we talk about runners' ability to run, how strong of an athlete they are, or what needs improvement, what are the philosophical, oh no, that's not the right word, physiological, physiological things you can look at? What makes each runner who they are as a runner?
Yeah, that's a very important question. And when I consider coaching an athlete or assisting a coach to coach an athlete, I use a very broad blanket that I call a MEM blanket.
Okay.
And MEM stands for mind, engine, mechanics.
MEM, okay.
And that's how I determine where the lowest hanging fruit is for that particular athlete. In most of the times when I'm working with developing athletes, it comes in point number one, the mind, right? So how they think and so on, because the capacity is readily available. But basically, from a physiological standpoint, I'm looking at capacity and economy, right? So, it's so interesting to see how different individuals, especially when you're working with age group athletes, right? To seeing which ones do well because they're economical and which ones do well because they have capacity. They've come from, say, a soccer background, or they've come from a basketball background. So they're quite aerobically fit, but they can't go far. They can run a 10K, they can run a 5K. So, and then, you get your slighter individuals that might not have as big a capacity, but they're extremely economical individuals. And then when you get to the superstars, they have both.
Yeah.
Right? They have large capacities and they have a huge amount of economy. And we'll get into some of those details, but that's what I'm looking at. But the filter is always the mind, right at the top.
Yeah, and you said MEM. I like that. I think people can always hang on to an acronym like that.
Yes, just mind, engine, mechanics.
Yes.
Right. So the engine is the nutrition and the fuel and the oxygen delivery and the VO2 max and all that sort of stuff. The mind stuff is clear, right? It's the psychological, it's the emotional. And then the mechanics are, where that engine takes the power to the road, right? So that's a big difference. So if you have a big engine in cycling, other than aerodynamics, you pretty much a good cyclist,
Yeah.
right? Um, but in running, if you don't have that interface with the road from the cardiovascular ability, you get people with, Reinhold Messner, who climbed Everest without oxygen, has a VO2 max in the high 80s, but can't run worth a damn, right?
Right.
Because he doesn't have the mechanics, hasn't prepped himself to be a runner, right?
Well, that's interesting. Have you seen, by the way, just side note, have you seen how many people are climbing Mount Everest now? It's like crazy.
Yeah, it's sad to me now. It's become something that I'm now viewing with, please stay away from
Yeah.
Everest.
I mean, it's
We're
getting so
done. Yeah.
dangerous. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Yeah.
okay, side note, you and I can go on tangents. We gotta stay on our script. Okay.
We got to stay on
Yeah.
track, right?
Okay, so second question. When you begin working with a new runner and start talking about
Yep.
what they need to do to improve, do you find yourself talking with them more about their form or their fitness? Maybe a bit of both.
Yeah, it's a good question, but the answer is
Yeah.
both. And it's normally about the lowest hanging fruit, right? It's normally about what is the first limiter when you're peeling the onion that
Mm-hmm.
presents itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what do you need to look at? So with school kids, often, before I knew that much, those first 12 years of coaching high school cross country and track, it was always about the physiology and training them and learning them, teaching them to be tough and resilient and all that kind of stuff. And then just training their little physiologies and their bigger physiology so that they could, become fit and then be able to produce a performance out of that fitness. But nowadays, it depends why the person comes to me with the older runners, masters runners, stuff like that. It's very often about, I got this niggle, I got this,
Yeah.
I got that. And as they get older, it's pretty clear that their biggest gains are going to be made in economy, not in capacity. And their biggest gains across the board are going to be made from being consistent. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at anything that's limiting their consistency. So whether that's intensity or whether that's mechanics,
Okay.
right? And then very often, because of what I've specialized in, people come to me about their mental game or they come to me about their mechanics.
Yeah, for sure.
So that would be the long answer to that question.
Yeah.
It depends.
No, I know. Depends is hard. I mean, that's like the word for everything we've been hearing the last month or so when we've been doing our podcast, because there are so many different factors in all of us and we're all individual. So, and I think that's what makes you such a great coach too, is that you understand that each person is individual. Let's talk a little bit about running economy, that term. What
Yep.
exactly is it? And what role does it play in our run fitness?
Yeah. So running economy is a much more modern, not like the last 10-year modern, but much more modern term than running capacity.
Okay.
When Fox and Matthews and these guys started doing the research, it was all about cardiovascular, right? So oxygen delivery, and the one with the biggest engine, the one that could use the most amount of oxygen, that kind of thing was the sole determinant, right? So you had one factor, which was who uses the least amount of oxygen at the same pace. That would be the most economical runner. But that picture has become way more complex, right? So you look at taking a old beat up VW, right, and putting a giant tuned V8 engine into that VW. It's not going to make the VW go very fast, and it's also the VW is going to break down, right? So both are important, right? So you have the physiological component of running economy, which is if you have an X size engine, how much of that engine do you need to use? And the one that uses the least amount of that engine to achieve the same intensity is the most economical runner. Right? But the other side, the flip side of that is there's a mechanical component too. You could have an engine which you use less of. So in other words, you're more economical, right? So in distance running in physiological terms, you always talk about fractionalized effort, right? Because the human body can only run flat out for about 8 seconds, right? And then it can only maximally utilize oxygen for somewhere between 6 and 12 minutes, right? And then it uses that maximum amount of oxygen. So if your VO2 max is, say, 55 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram of body weight per minute, right? You can use a high percentage of that for an abbreviated period of time. That represents your engine. Anything further than that is fractionalized.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the less of that maximum engine you use, the more economical you are. But if your tires are wobbling, all right, and your tires are towed in and your shock absorbers are shot and there's a lot of up and down movement, or your tires are flat and there's, a lot of the energy is going out sideways, all of that is the mechanical side of economy. So you add those together, which is basically training. Right at the top of everything sits genetics. Sadly enough, in our sport, it's filtered through genetics. One of my mentors, Tim Noakes, used to say, if you want to be a better runner, you have to go back and re-choose your parents. So genetics sits at the top, but then there's how you train, the muscle fiber types that you have, what specifically you're training for. You're training for a mile, or you're training for a marathon. All of those things determine how your economy develops.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on the mechanical components of running economy, but is there a way that we can measure our running economy? I mean, there's so many measurements out there now and numbers and all these things. Like, is there some way to do that?
Yes, there are. And it's about the quality of your data, right? So the elites are now getting into a great situation where they go, okay, I'm sponsored by X shoe company, right? And they have 2 or 3 offerings in the racing shoe department. Which one's better for me? Right? And that's a nice illustration of what the mechanical components are, right? So there's a neurological component and then there's a biomechanical component, right? So those are the 2 components that make up mechanical efficiency. And they are 2 parts of the 5 parts of running economy, which I spoke about previously. And so when you can measure those, right, then you can see what output does the athlete have relative to the maximum output that they are capable of, right? So, for example, you can get like form power. So, in other words, there's power that the athlete puts out when they're running. You can measure that nowadays with devices, right? Stride makes that beautiful device. There are even some numbers coming from Garmin as well, all right, that are a little bit more indirect, but also still useful, right? But now the power that you put out is that what speed is that power creating? Right? And some of that power goes towards lifting you up and down off the ground. So you going vertically. So that's vertical oscillation. All right. Some of that power is being used to keep you on line. So your left foot goes down. Some runners go more to the left. Or your right foot goes down. Some runners go more to the left than others. That's power usage to go left and right and to go up and down. Right. So now that gets subtracted from the power that you have to make you go forward. So if you can get that, which is called form power, right? And you divide your form power by your total power, you get like a form power ratio, which is pretty much what your running efficiency is.
I see.
Your mechanical efficiency.
And then how do you use that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So if you take it from the beginning of the stride, right, when you hit the ground, okay, so the first part of your stride, from the time you hit the ground until your leg gets underneath you, is more about protection and loading, right? So you're putting yourself down softly, you're loading all your connective tissues. Once it gets underneath you, from there to your toe off, that's your power component. So you can work on both of those, right? So let's say you're running a marathon. You might want to make sure that you have a gait that has a lower impact loading rate. So in other words, you're not beating yourself up eccentrically as much. But if you're running a 5K or a 10K, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You want the other end. You want lots of power.
I see.
Right? So people look at elite runners and they say, wow, look how softly and how gently they run, right? But they're putting their feet down hard,
Mm-hmm.
3, 4, 5 times harder than the average person. They
Okay.
are trying to get that leg spring stiffness.
Mm.
So you can work on how you move your limbs. So reduce your braking, reduce your up and down. All of those things are impactable through drills and stuff like that. But you can also impact how quickly you come off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be other kinds of exercises,
Yeah.
stuff like power work, like plyometrics and so on.
Yeah.
But back to the old model of bouncing a basketball, right? You take air out of the basketball, you can hammer it into ground as hard as you want. It's not going to come off great. So you have to make that basketball stiff. We were talking earlier about basketball, right? So there's strength work and there's drill work and there's power work and there's balance work and there's coordination work. All of those together form that neural component. For example, the neural component is how quickly can you contract your muscles around your knee, your hip, and your ankle so you can come off the ground real quick.
Do you still do all those
You know,
drills
so
on a weekly basis, daily basis? Or do you still like to do them?
I do.
Yeah.
I teach a lot of drills, right? So I keep up doing my drills even at my age,
Yeah.
you know, but I have a lot of coaches that use that, and I now have other models that
Yeah.
I use. I don't use myself
Yeah.
as a model to do drills.
I-
You were a good model to do
Oh,
drills.
well, I think
remember
that's,
that.
I mean, I sometimes forget like how important that is by keeping my power up and, you know, my speed and all of that. I just go for runs sometimes now just to get a sweat on. But I think it's important, and I like how you're explaining it because, you know, it actually, it can work for all of us. We need to do this no matter if we're elites or we're just starting our run. And this actually is a good transition to the next question. You know, for most age group runners, what is a typical area with the biggest room of improvement? And I think that's kind of this right now. It's mechanics. I mean, obviously, I think most of us like to rev our engines and we like to go out and sweat and run. But I think for me, it is those mechanics. Those are the things that you forget about, or you think, oh, I don't have time for it.
Yep. So again, genetics determine your VO2 max capacity.
Okay.
You can improve your VO2 max by the right kind of training, right? But pretty much, you know, once you start hitting 30, 35, your ability to improve in those departments, especially if you've maximized those, is very, very limited.
Okay.
And the thing that holds most runners back is injury. And injury comes from overuse.
Yeah.
And overuse doing incorrect movements.
Okay.
So running mechanics became very effective when people realized if I don't get injured, I'm more consistent. If I'm more consistent, I run better. Now we know that running mechanics is a massive performance accelerator as well, right? So there's very simple, eloquent research studies like just do squats. You just do squats, you're going to be a much more efficient runner. You're going to be much more economical. And that's just squats. Never mind all the other refined stuff you could be doing, right? And the time that you spend doing squats does not improve your VO2 max at all. It just improves your mechanical efficiency.
Okay.
Right? So it is where it's by far more important. Obviously, you have to be physiologically sound. You have to be cardiovascularly sound.
Yes.
But how many people just look at a marathon runner? Let's say you've got a 5K runner. He runs 25 minutes for 5K, and he's trying to go 3:30 for the marathon, right? But when he's running that 3:30 marathon, his heart rate is so much lower than it is when he's running 5K. So obviously his cardiovascular capacity is not his limit in the marathon.
Right.
His limit in the marathon is his legs and his mechanics and how he moves those legs and how he puts himself down and how he comes off the ground and how long his stride length is and how much he could reduce his vertical oscillation.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's other things involved in efficiency like nutrition and hydration and all those kind of things. But mechanics of those two, of working on the cardiovascular or working on the mechanical efficiency, trumps it every time.
Yeah, I agree. And then mechanical efficiency too at the end of those long races. So many people forget that that's where it really kind of clicks, is that, oh, okay, if I can hold my form through 26.2 or through those ultras, that's really where you see the benefit. It's at the end of the race. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
it's interesting. Like, I don't know if you saw the London Marathon and how they talked about the runner up there, which oh, I want to say his name. I know his name, but I'm
Uh,
mixing it. Yagelch
yeah, I'm thinking of Sawe
Sawe
as the
won.
winner. And, yep.
Yagelchich.
Yep.
I'm just blanking.
Kajelja.
Yes, Kajelchich.
Kajelja.
Something
Yeah.
like that. Anyways,
Yeah.
he had the speed suit on that supposedly holds his body in a way that is going to keep him a little bit more mechanically sound. Did you read about that?
I did read a little bit about that, but I've seen research about that before, right? So even with the invention of some running shoes coming from mountain running, we know that a lot of eccentric micro tearing happens when the muscle moves down the bone rapidly.
Yeah.
Right? And so keeping that muscle up and against the bone is very, very useful, right?
Okay.
And so that's why we need some shock absorption in the shoes. And that's one of the reasons why we've done so well with the super shoes, is because they cushion so well, right? So they they reduce this micro damage, right? And then the thing with the clothing nowadays as well, from an aerodynamic standpoint, clothing starts to count at about 4:48 pace.
Wow.
So if you're running for 2 hours at 4:48 pace or better, which these guys are, now you can have less drag. You're starting to become a bit like a cyclist, right? The less drag you have, the better.
Yeah.
And they figure when Kipchoge ran sub-2, that the biggest factor was the reduction of wind resistance by running in that echelon with those guys.
Yeah,
that was the biggest factor.
Yeah.
So
it's fascinating. And I want to get on to our next question, but it's Yomif Kajelcha. That's his name.
Kajelcha,
And I just couldn't get it out. And you were there. You had it, but it just was at the tip of my tongue. Yeah, the Ethiopian man who also broke 2 hours in the marathon with Sawe. Just amazing. So go and check that out, listeners, if you want. Hear about the shoes that they were wearing, but the runner-up was wearing a speed suit as well. So just fascinating stuff.
And then also very, very different approach to nutrition.
Yeah.
Very, very different approach to dealing with acidosis, with dealing with hydrogen ions.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on nowadays.
So much science right now. There's a lot of science behind all of it. It's not just...
But the psychology also, which is going to be interesting going forward. They both isolated themselves. They were monk-like in their approach. They didn't race often. They isolated themselves even from their families to go on these extended, deep blocks of training. Right? So it's taking a lot nowadays.
It is. Let's talk a little bit about how we improve our engine. Yeah, is run training the best way to improve our engine, or is there anything else we can do alongside our running to boost our capacity to run? We talked a little bit about the mechanics, but when you think of improving our engine, what do you think of? What comes to mind?
So engine is about oxygen uptake and oxygen delivery, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do to improve your engine. The reason why even the best runners in the world only run about 13, 14 hours a week is because their legs let them down. So anything else that can raise your heart rate, that you can do zone 1, zone 2 type work with, or even higher levels, is same heart, same lungs, same oxygen delivery system, same legs, right? So any of those things like, cycling and those assault bikes, those kind of arms and legs things, those are brilliant because there's no impact, but you can get your heart rate up. You can hold your heart rate up for a very, very long period of time. You can do a lot of intensity without risking, say, your hips, your knees, your ankles, your feet, stuff like that. So we've seen this with the triathletes over and over again. They come from a running background. They reduce their run training by 40, 50, 60%. And then they end up being better runners. I even had an Olympic triathlete. He's been to 2 Olympics now. He's got 2 silver medals in the relay. Um, when he first came to triathlon, I recruited him from running, right? So he was a really good little runner, 13 and a half minutes for 5K. He was good, right? And he did an hour of swimming and an hour of biking a day,
Okay.
right? And then he went up to Boston and he said his all-time PR for 3,000 meters.
Wow.
All right. He ran like 750, right?
Okay.
And he came and he said, you know what? I'm going back to running. I'm just going to keep biking and swimming. And I thought, oh no, I've lost him. But eventually we got him
We
back,
got him back.
So
I love
yeah,
that.
and he went to the Olympics as a triathlete twice. So, and he probably has a chance of going again. But it was fantastic. So, there's so many things you can do that raise your heart rate, keep it up nice and steady, that you can do intensity. It's aerobic without the limitations of your legs being smashed. But there's one thing people must remember is that form fits function.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you find your aerobic fitness going up and up and up and up because you're riding the bike is also mechanically hurting your run.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so too with swimming, right? It is different motor patterns. It's concentric versus eccentric. It should, so if you cycle 9 hours a week and you only run 5 hours a week, you're going to become a better cyclist with a very good cardiovascular system. But you might start getting injured in the run, and you might, you lose your mechanical flow in the run. It can happen.
Okay.
So you've always got to remember that. So
careful.
triathletes are always fighting that battle. But sometimes, if you're an older runner or something like that, and you just keep getting beaten up and you start cross training and you find you getting joy and meaning and satisfaction from riding a bike, well, sometimes you might need to decide, look, it's time for me to just ride my bike for my health or to whatever.
Yeah.
But for running, cross training is absolutely essential. It's almost a cheat code.
Yeah.
Because how many people can run 40 miles a week?
Right.
Not many.
I know.
So, and when you go, okay, but I need to run at least 60 if I want to run a marathon. Well, what is that 60 for? So, when I work with marathon runners, I put a lot of walking, a lot of hiking, because that's what they need. That last third of the marathon, they need leg strength. They need to be able to stay on their legs to express the fitness they have.
Yeah.
And they can't get that marathon hardness from running. They've got to break it up. They've got to walk. They've got to hike. They've got to spend time on their legs. They need to build that marathon hardness a different way.
It's so interesting. I mean, the more that I study, and I basically study runners. I haven't really done any commentary for triathletes, but you look at Cole Hocker, the Olympic gold medalist in the 1500 meter. He does a lot of biking now, more running, but he does add in biking I think he does. I think he cycles at least 4 times a week, if I'm not mistaken. Georgia Bell from, she's overseas. She's an international athlete from Great Britain. She was a bronze medalist in the 1500. She too does a lot of cycling. I mean, you see more and more runners bringing that in. Maybe not doing a second run, but doing a second workout on the bike or in the pool. So it's very interesting.
No, I mean, you will notice that with a lot of them. When I took Josiah to the Olympic Games in Atlanta, people said, he was the slowest of the 3 South African marathon runners that we took to those games. And they trained together in Albuquerque in that last period of time, and they did everything the same. And they said to me, well, how did Josiah end up winning? And I said, I don't know particularly. He was very strong mentally, very clear mentally, very single-minded. But he did do one thing they didn't do physically. He went for these long 3-4 hour hikes on a Sunday in the mountains of Albuquerque on his own, while the other guys were in the house.
Well, everyone else was maybe
and I
resting.
wonder if in that heat of Atlanta, that didn't, push him over the edge.
Interesting.
Yeah,
sometimes it's like, what did we do? We don't even know, but it worked.
It worked. Exactly. There's so many things.
So many things. And I think that we should have another episode where we really break down mechanics. I do find it fascinating, and I think that you and I could talk a long time about it. But I just want to kind of touch a little bit more. Is our run form something that you think is fixable or changeable? I mean, there are times where, take, for instance, even a couple of the former Nike Oregon Project athletes that were with Alberto Salazar. He really worked on changing forms of like Galen Rupp. And I don't know if it really worked. Galen started to get some injuries and things like that. Not to say that Alberto was wrong, but I don't know if it really worked. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's a way more multifaceted answer,
Okay.
right? So you mentioned one of the things. If they are getting injured because of some form anomaly,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you then change that form anomaly, right? And obviously, the less skilled the runner is, the less developed they are, the less habituated they are,
Yeah.
the easier it's going to be to change that,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So the old thing about form fits function, if you are healthy enough and you have pretty good natural mechanics,
Mm.
those mechanics will mostly improve if you don't break down.
Yeah.
So if you very gradually build up your run, and you're a horrendous looking runner, it's not like swimming, right? If you look horrendous, that doesn't mean to say you're inefficient,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you're uneconomical. And if you build it up slowly over time, you will adapt to be strong and healthy and fast in that range that you have,
Yeah.
right? But if there are certain things, like running is a skill, right? And a lot of people think it's about lifting, and it's not. It's about putting down. It's about stiffening. It's about coming down.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to run softer, springier, right? Braking less, all of those things are teachable
Yeah.
and lead to improved performance and reduced injuries. So you don't change somebody's footprint, their fingerprint of their running.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever played this game. We used to play this game where we'd look at the silhouettes of runners
Okay.
and we'd try to determine who the runner
Oh,
was.
fun. I've not played that,
Right?
but I want to do
And
it.
and it was so cool. Yeah, you can definitely see who runs out.
Mm-hmm.
You just watch Joni running in the dark, you know it's Joni.
Yeah.
Got those little out feet, the little high cadence. It's so easy to
Right.
see, right? So everybody has a footprint,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the details.
Uh,
So if they've got a lot of hip drop and it's because of a coordination thing or a balance thing or an imbalance
yeah.
thing or they are thinking a certain way that my job is to do this, right? So a lot of amateur runners reach, for example.
Mm,
They don't think of pushing. And then those that know to
sure.
push backwards and not down. So there's all sorts of things when you look at an elite run and you say, form fits function. They learned to run fast. They learned how to move their bodies. And if you watch them over time, you will notice that when they were kids, they didn't run like they were running when they were elites.
Yeah.
They were different.
Yeah.
They had longer stride lengths, lower cadences, whatever. And as they got stronger and harder and ran more mileage, the running itself beat a good form into them,
Yeah.
right? But if you still look at elites today, their biggest limitation is injury,
Mm-hmm.
right? And injury comes from mostly overuse.
Hmm.
And the overuse means you're doing something a little bit incorrectly.
Yeah.
And you can do that same thing in a very similar way. So the research is clear. If you mess with somebody's form, if you change their arm action or you're going to just injure them. It's not going to work.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
But if you look at what's a limiter and you decide,
Yeah.
can strength fix that? Can power fix that? Can range of motion fix that? Can improved balance fix that? That's to me what working with somebody's form is about.
Yeah. Teachable, not changeable. I kind of like that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I always say that I cannot teach anybody anything.
Mm,
I have been blessed with the ability over time. I can only reach into them, shake off that which is not good running and leave the good running that they have behind.
okay.
So I play a reductionist game. I remove what doesn't work for them
Yeah.
to leave behind what does work for them.
Right. Yeah.
And so you're not giving them anything, you're just cleaning them up.
Exactly. And it's so funny. I'll say to my husband every now and then, let me know when I start to look like a different runner. Because then I
Yeah.
know I need to focus on some sort of strength or whatever. Because, you see a lot of these elite athletes that love to run, and hopefully will be able to run for a lifetime. But there are some that struggle with certain things as they get older. And I still feel like I look like I did when I was running as an elite. I don't think I probably do, but I always tell my husband, I'm like, tell me if one of my knees is turning in, or tell me if my foot is starting to turn
Yeah.
out, or, if I just don't look like myself, because then something will go wrong and then I will end up changing. And I don't want to change. I want to
Yeah.
stay the same.
All of sport, especially when we talk about elites, all of sport is extreme.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't aspire as average runners or as age groupers or as amateurs. We shouldn't aspire to do what the elites do.
Mm,
We should aspire to be part of that family as runners,
mm.
but it should be for a lifetime. It should be for
Yes.
health. It should be, sure, we can compete and so on, but trying endlessly to run 100 miles a week when you've never got higher than 60 and
Oh,
breaking
yeah, no.
down is an exercise in futility. I
Mm-hmm.
was at the hospital the other day. A top journalist that used to support all of us throughout the years, Mike Sandrock, ended up in hospital the other day,
Mm,
and I went to visit him, and there were so many elites there, right? But
really?
these were elites that were in their 60s and in their
Oh,
70s, right? And watching those Olympic champions, world record holders walk down the passage in the hospital was a little disturbing.
yeah, I
They were,
know.
they were struggling,
Yeah,
And so too much of anything is not a good thing. And they themselves say, I ride my bike now. I love it.
sure.
If only I'd known, I would have ridden my bike more. I would have done this. I would have done that.
Mm.
It's just an evolution.
It really
It's
is. I try real hard to make sure to get out on the playground. And like last night, we played wiffle ball, and I was sprinting
Yep.
as fast as I could when I was running those bases, just doing things like being a kid. Yeah, I'm using my arms, driving my knees, doing all those things, because I don't want to forget. But I also, like I said at the top of the show, I'm not one to go and do drills anymore. And that's a simple way. It's a fun way. And I can teach my
Yeah.
young kids how to, get a little bit more powerful maybe in their stride.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot
And
about. Oh yeah,
also tap into that very important word, rhythm,
yeah.
which is the underpinning of everything in life and in running.
Mm.
Don't fight your rhythms. I work with athletes that have cadences, that are elite athletes that have cadences of like 175,
Yeah,
180,
yeah.
right? And then I work with other elites that have cadences of 220. They built differently. They have different ranges of motion.
Yeah,
They have different ways of approaching it, and they both world class.
yeah. It's not one
Both
size
sides of the
fits
coin.
all.
So,
That's right.
but the rhythm part, the drills part, I can do drills, but I can't run.
Mm.
you know, and which means that there's something healthy about that. There's something dance-like about that. There's
Totally.
something earthy and organic about
Yeah,
that. It's
yeah,
just, it's what we need to do. We need to learn to move our bodies, not because it makes us more effective. It makes us happier,
yes.
makes us joyful.
I
It makes
agree.
us be both a physical and a mental being.
You're so it's so true. It's why I mean that's really why I run now. I'd love to get out and it's like my happy hour. I go and have 4 miles, 3 miles with some friends and chat real quick, and then I get back to work and all the craziness of life. And it's been a real blessing to have in
Exactly.
my life.
And that little buzz you have when you sit down in front of the
Yes.
computer, you're just like your whole body's
I
singing.
know.
You
I
know?
did something hard today. We've
Yep.
talked about mechanics, we've talked about the engine, but we haven't talked a lot about the mental game. And I know that you
Yep.
are very big into training your brain. So, how much does the mental game affect a runner and their performance?
When I first started working for the U.S. Olympic Committee, they had a manual, right? Got it on the shelf behind me. About what they realized. Firstly, that they can't put a sports psychologist with a Olympic athlete,
Yeah.
right? The interface with the athlete has to be the coach,
Mm,
right? And there was a statement that they made, right? That you can have a perfect mental game, but if you're not physically capable, you're not going to win the gold medal. But the flip side is also true. You can have the perfect body, the perfect speed, the perfect fitness. If you
mhm.
don't have the mental game, it's not going to happen for you.
Yeah.
It's definitely not going to happen for you. So I consider the sports psychology, the psych-emotional component as the key to access of the physical ability. Whatever physical ability you have, access to it is determined by your mental game. And I think the other part to add to that, that's why the first M in MEM is mind.
Yep.
And I think the other part of that too is, and it's the part that I'm working with a sports psychologist now, and I'm so excited about this project, is this realization that I had that the highest level of performing on a mental side is to be tough, to be mentally tough, to be robust, to be resilient.
Yep.
And it's not.
Okay.
The highest level is to be anti-fragile. And so we've come up with a word, because anti-fragile means avoid being fragile, which means the focus is on fragility, which is not a good idea. The word we came up with is thrivement.
Oh, thrivement. Yeah.
So a thrive mentality, THRYVMENT, thrivement.
Okay.
And so we're creating this course where we're teaching people to find what their limiters are and learning to use those limiters as fuel. And it's not my idea, right? This is a concept that a guy came up with. His name is Nassim Taleb.
Okay.
And he wrote this book on anti-fragility. And it's this ability that we become stronger and more capable by doing hard things. We actually can get to a point where hard things are the thing we need to be our best.
Yeah.
It is the fuel. So the harder it gets out there in the marathon, the harder it gets out there in the 10K, the higher the intensity gets, the more meaning you find, the more joy you find, the more satisfaction you find in your ability to do hard things. And now brain research is proving that that's where we need to go.
Oh, I love that.
So going out every day and realizing the privilege, being so incredibly grateful to be able to do what you're doing, by seeking the joy, by stopping at the top of the climb and looking at the sunset or looking at the sunrise, or by seeing somebody walking along with a beautiful dog, or by really appreciating it when you greet somebody and they greet you back just a little bit more than is necessary, right? They literally engage for that brief second. That's thrivement. You know, being able to thrive in that environment. Not, I'm tough, I go out there, I deal with the weather and so on. When you go out in the rain and you used to hate running in the rain and now you love running in the rain, that's the whole process. And it takes time, because it's quite easy to learn in training. And then when you're in competition and the chips are down, it all goes out the window and the old person comes back, the defensive, the vulnerable, that kind of thing. So that message on that side. And we can have probably a whole podcast.
Oh, we're going
just
to, because I am totally inspired by this right now. I mean, I always look at the glasses half full in life, or at least I try, right? And I think I do, even as a parent, and then maybe as a coach, like, come on, you can tough out those tough moments. Like you can embrace the pain, and there's a little negativity there. And I don't always love that, but I think it's more just the wording, like you say, can even just give an athlete the chance to breathe through some of these moments that are hard. And that's why we're good athletes, is because we can handle pain. We can handle the scariness of pushing to a whole new level, right? But I like your approach of it's not a softer approach. It's just like a more positive feeling.
Yeah, it's not even positive. It's just real. It's about being present, right?
Yeah.
I said to my colleague in this Thrivement project that we're going on, Corey Reich, I said to him, I don't like and will not use when I talk the word pain in a voluntary activity. If you go out there and you push hard and you experience intensity, you do not have the right to call it pain.
Okay.
Because it's something that you are going out, that you are wanting, that you are seeking.
Sure.
So it's effort, it's intensity, it's something else, but it's not pain.
Oh, this is so good. We are definitely doing this for a whole new podcast. Right. And I'm going to have my daughter come on and ask you all the questions, because, she's learning all of this. But we have one more question. We have the cool down question,
Yes.
and it's a good one. It's a
Yep.
question from our audience. And Jason from Delaware wrote in, and he said, I have a slight leg length discrepancy where my left leg is a bit longer than my right. I've noticed, I never notice it, rather, until my bike is fitted.
Bike fitted,
Yeah. And so he'll tweak his bike, obviously, and things like that. He said it made him wonder, is there anything I need to do in my run form to make me more efficient with the slight difference?
Yes. So, firstly, Jason, thank you for a brilliant question. You're my first friend from Delaware. I don't know anybody from Delaware that I can think. um, so the answer is yes and no and depends.
Oh, great.
So
All of the
in the
things.
medical community, in the medical community, in the orthopedic community, they often don't consider a leg length discrepancy of less than 10 millimeters, of less than a centimeter, as causative of anything.
Okay.
But that's not for runners, right? So in running, it can mean something. A leg length discrepancy can lead to issues. Now, Jason gives it away by saying, I've never noticed it. If you haven't noticed it, right, it means it's not hurting you, it's not impacting you. So now if you wore sort of a device on each foot with an accelerometer or something like a stride device or the duo setup where you have one on each foot, you might find a little bit of power loss in the one side, or you might find a little bit of greater impact on the longer side.
I see.
Right? Or your knee might be collapsing on that side, right? So you've got to decide. It also depends where it comes from. Is it in your femur or is it in your tibia, right? And that impacts how the bike fit works as well, right? Because if it's in your tibia, it's pointless putting a little lift on your bicycle pedal, right? But it's a good idea if you have a power imbalance, the power you're creating with your left pedal versus your right pedal, to put in a little lift on the pedal to make up for that tibial difference, right?
Okay.
It also depends usually, and I sort of started with this, whether your leg length discrepancy is functional. In other words, because your pelvis is a bit misaligned or because your lower spine is a little bit misaligned. Any one of those things can lead to a deficiency, all right, that you can adjust, that a PT or a chiropractor can address.
Okay.
Right? Or is it structural? You had an x-ray, somebody measured it, you really have a tibia that's X amount longer than your other tibia or shorter or whatever the case might be, right? But the big thing is, does it hurt you? And then the next best thing, is it impairing your performance? Because if you've had a lifelong structural leg length discrepancy with no problems at all, if you then go and address it, you will get problems.
Right.
Because your body's not used to it being balanced. So it's a really, really good question. It also depends on the type of foot strike you have. And if there are issues, what is the issue? So sometimes, if you're a heel striker, you can just put in a little heel lift if you're getting problems with that. But if you're a midfoot striker, now you need to get slightly bigger shoes and you need to put a whole foot lift in that shoe. So there's 1,000 things that happen. But mostly, Jason, it sounds like you don't have problems. Don't mess with it.
And definitely probably talk to a professional about it as well. I mean, there's things that we can try to tweak on our own, but things go awry real easy when we start to do that. So
precisely. Precisely. The tolerance levels, if we do something consistently, are very small. Right? You could be running the same route every day for years and years and years. You go visit a friend and you run in an area where there's more rainfall, there's more camber on the road. You go for your usual hour run and then you don't know why your ankle hurts or why your knee hurts. So it's so subtle.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really fun and we will have you back for sure.
Thanks for listening to the RunDot podcast. Help us out by leaving a rating and review on your listening platform of choice. For more opportunities to learn from our coaches, check out our YouTube channel and follow RunDot Training on social. Ready to train with us? Head to rundot.com and get started for free. Until next time, happy training.